Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to, first of all, acknowledge that May the 5th is the National Day of Awareness of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls in Canada, also known as Red Dress Day. Over 1,000 women and girls have gone missing in this country, and we feel for all the families. Also like to recognize that we are on KFN territorial lands. And so first thing, call the meeting to order and adoption of the agenda.
Move.
Second.
All in favor? Great, carried. And we have Inspector Mike Kerbers with the RCMP going to give us the quarterly RCMP statistics for Comox. And Mike, just to note that in the screens that you gave us, that a lot of Area B is included in some of the statistics that we have for Comox. So just for folks to note that. And I'll turn it over to you, Mike. You got 10 minutes, and then I'm sure there'll be questions.
Okay, I'll just kind of quickly read over the report. It kind of gives comparisons to the quarterly report and the yearly averages. Then I sent over a PDF map of, I'm going to say, spots of interest where files and things are happening. So we can go through that quickly as well. So if you see me shuffling around, I'm operating two mouse for two computers. So bear with me.
You're Ambrosius, I guess they would call that, right? Ambrosius.
So as last year, I kind of started doing this where we do quarterly reporting. So it gives you an idea of what's going on in your community. So calls to service, which is CFS, between January 1st, 2019 and December of last year, there was 2,708 calls in the Comox community. Likewise, the year after that, there was about 2,806 to be exact, which, if you like statistics, is 3.6 increase in calls to service in the calendar year. Relative to the fourth quarter, there was a 31% increase in calls for service in the just generally calls for service. If you look at the stats from the early yearly reports we're taking, you can see the averages per month of what the calls for service are for in your community. So, and I put in the last three because our yearly report goes from April to March 31st. So that's why we put the last in 2021, those are the calls to service for those months. I didn't go further into it because I wanted to kind of end it at our fiscal year. So as you can see, you're averaging pretty much the same per month. Some are a little higher, some are a little lower. And that's just the general calls to service in the community. So then we broke it down into specific areas. So traffic stats, which is one of the community's priorities. From January 2019 to December 2019, there was 253 traffic files in the community. These are ones that are reported to us, and we did some kind of investigation. In 2020, the same time frame, there's 240. So it's decrease of 13 files, not very significant when it comes to traffic complaints. And if you look at the stats relative to the full year, they're all pretty even, except for March was a little bit of an anomaly because you went up to 26 calls for service. And I'll talk about a little bit more about traffic a little further on in this talk. Break and enters again from January 2019 to December 2019. There were 55 break and enter files in the Comox community. And from January 2020 to December 2020, there's 78. So there's definitely 23 file increase. And that's significant because break and enters are very serious, and we take those seriously. We try to investigate them the best we can. Then you look at the fourth quarter, there was a decrease in 17 break and enter files in the fourth quarter as compared to last year. One of the reasons is one of our prolific offenders is in custody, so there is a decrease in that area. Theft from motor vehicle, again, using 2019 and 2020 as our marks. There were 139 theft from vehicle files in 2019. And then 2020, there was 62. So there's a 54% decrease. And again, that's going to relate to certain individuals that are prolific in that area, and they've been either moved out of the community or we've dealt with them through our police actions. Again, last quarter not very significant. You got 2 in January, 8 in February, and 3 in March. So which is quite a bit of a decrease. I know 2019 was a hot year. 2020 wasn't, and again, it's slowed down in that area. Assaults for 2019. 52 assault files. And then in 2020, there was 58. So there's an increase of 6. And it's pretty relative for the 2 years. And for this quarter, the last quarter, pretty minimal in that area, which is good. That's a good result for everybody. Sexual offenses. Again, there was 15 in 2019, and there was 20 in 2020. That is an increase of 4. So we're busy in that area. There's significant files and investigations. Sometimes they take a bit of time because there's a lot of parties involved and a lot of different interviews and things we have to do with that. So it takes time to investigate those. And finally, domestics, which spousal or partner domestics, domestic violence. In 2019, there's 51 files in Comox community. And then in 2020, there was 64. So there's an increase of 13 files. Again, these are files of significance, and we try and deal with those appropriately. We do have a dedicated investigator for domestic violence. She reviews all domestic violence files according to E-Division practices and BC policies. We review those. We take appropriate actions where appropriate. If there's a member needs follow-ups, that member does that because that's her specialty. And she takes a lot of those files on herself with safety planning and different aspects of the investigation. So I think we're very good at that area. So having said that, I'm just going to go back to some of the traffic concerns. I know the community we get the reports. I know the community gets reports about the traffic in the different areas and what we're doing to combat that. So last quarter, I'll speak to the last quarter first. So we had 113 contacts with individuals. So that's 113 either tickets or notices in order that were issued to individuals, and that's over a 3-month period. And that's a lot. So I have different things: speeding in a school zone, speeding general, a lot of speeding, no insurance, and that's significant. No insurance is quite expensive. And the areas that I can send these stats to you, I can send them, and you guys can review them. A lot of it is there's Pritchard Road, Aspen, Noel, Guthrie, Cambridge, Knight Road, McDonald, Lerwick. So it's generally all through the community where we're hitting these spots and writing the tickets. So, and again, and talk to our yearly stats. We when tickets are written and notice and orders are issued, they come to our office and they're tabulated, and it goes into our traffic data repository, which we can access, and we get these stats from because that's how we keep our stats. So our traffic person does that all the time. So and it's significant. So last year there were 532 contacts in a year. So that's from January to December. So 436 violation tickets of varying different things. And then there was 96 notice and orders. And that's typically there's a light out or you need to fix a windshield, and then they have to go get that repaired and come back and prove that they've made these repairs to the vehicle. So again, a lot of that is speeding, no insurance, school zone speeding. And a lot of these are in that category. Fail obey traffic signs. Just quite a varying degree of the type of violation tickets. Most of the time it's speeding because that's the big concern on the communities and the different areas that contact us. Again, areas of concern, we have Laszlo Road, Guthrie Knight, a lot of the spots that we need to patrol, and then we get the reports on. We got Gladstone, and I'm just picking streets off the map here because there's quite a few areas that we visit and we do our patrols in. I know Laszlo Road is quite significant, and we do go there quite regularly. Yeah, there's a lot on Martin and Knight and Noel, all the usual spots. And these stats are available. If you need them, just let me know and I can, because it's quite significant. So I have to PDF it and I can send it to you. It can give you an idea where we're doing our enforcement. So I don't know if you got the, I'll just kind of quickly segue into that PDF map I sent out. I don't know if you got that up. So there's, if you look at the legend, that's generally areas where files are generated. So if you look at the yellow, that's that space generated 2 to 5 files that we investigated in one way or another. And then it goes to the red area, which is more significant where a lot of the files are in that red area of the community. If you break it down a little further, sorry, you can see where all the traffic hotspots we're hitting for enforcement, and that's those yellow boxes. Trying to enforce those areas and making sure we do our bit there for the community. And then there's your B&Es. Those are the hotspots where the B&Es have taken place. And then you got the auto thefts. There's only 3 in the last quarter, which is very good. And then TMV means theft from motor vehicles. So that's people are getting their cars broken into and items are being taken. A lot of times it's just an unlocked vehicle and someone's forgotten to take something in. So, and that's it for the quick synopsis of what we're doing for the stats. We can open up to questions if you like.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Mike. I'll open it up. Do councilors have any questions for the inspector? Councilor McGowan, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the report. I really appreciate it. For clarification, with the traffic stops or traffic checks, are you just kind of coming out to calls when people make them, or are there stops and kind of traps set up for those areas? And what kind of time of day are we looking at?
Time of day. It all depends on what shift the member's working. We do both days and nights. So, and a lot of these are just initiatives that your community has brought forward about traffic enforcement in certain areas. So we will go to those areas and patrol those areas specifically upon request. There's those that come in from the community, and we'll put it on our report and ask members to patrol those areas. So these stats are specifically from our traffic member. We're not even calculating the ones from our general duty members that are writing violation tickets. So I hope that answers your question.
Councilor Minions.
Thanks, Inspector Carruthers. I'm just wondering if you guys still do the high school liaison program with one of your members, and if it's a specific person, and more so to, when the Comox Valley School District is sending out information, they're seeing a lot of escalation and like bullying and things going on because of the COVID year. And I'm just wondering if that member goes in and does specific talks on kind of in a friendly way, kind of the safe way that kids can be reporting or, having that relationship with police on some of the escalated bullying that's going on in the high schools?
Yeah, we've suspended some of the frontline officers going to the schools because of COVID. We still have Constable Taragni and Corporal Cliff going and dealing with the school district and all the things that are happening in there. So in a way, we are still going there and dealing with those issues, but directly having a member in there, we've kind of suspended that because of obviously COVID.
Councilor McKenna.
Thanks, Mayor. And thanks for your report, Mike. Just a question around, I'm as a citizen, what can I do when I see 5 hot rods barreling down Comox Ave, heading to Lazo Road? Like, what is my best course of action is it to call, RCMP, or do I write down the license plates and report it later? I can't tell, obviously, if they're speeding. I've got no control over that, but I can sense they are speeding and they're flying down the road, and it happens, 11 o'clock at night kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yep.
So first thing is to call it in. I got to remind everybody that they'll be prioritized because our dispatchers, if it's after hours, our dispatchers will take those calls, and they'll fan it out to the members, and they'll try and get to it depending on what the priority files are in the queue. Taking license plates is good, but a lot of times if we follow up that kind of scenario, people have to become witnesses, and a lot of people are reluctant to kind of become witnesses if we do issue a violation ticket. So what we do is, I'm going to use the word target. We kind of go in those areas. If we know those are areas and we get repeat calls from those areas, we will set something up where we do routine patrols in area to make it more of a visible presence. So we see if we can kind of catch those people speeding down those roads. I can relate one incident where we had some of these, I'm going to say hot rods because of my age, and they were all linked to the base. So I talked to Kevin Colsey, and that ended pretty quickly. So there are ways we can deal with these kind of scenarios. First is to call it in. You might get an information file, but then that information is put on our daily report, and the members are aware of that because that's read to them, and then they'll make efforts to go to those areas. The second component is if you see that, because you automatically become a witness. So that's the kind of stumbling block we have, because people are mostly reluctant to come and testify in those kind of scenarios.
And just a quick follow-up question. You mentioned the base. You guys must have a great relationship with the base. Do they help you on these kind of files ever? Like, do they, I'll ask it more specifically. Can they instruct their MPs to assist in traffic violations, for instance?
Yes, I believe they can. They are peace officers, and I know they're standing at TP Park quite often. So they do have the ability to do that, and a lot of it is base related. It's more of a case of we're assisting them with certain scenarios, if it's a military role or some kind of scenario on base where it's a more in-depth criminal investigation, and we help them that way. Most of the time they have their own investigators, but sometimes we do step in to kind of assist them.
Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Swift.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike, for your report. And as I'm sure you're aware, there is that concern about street racing that goes on. But my question is, do you have any sense of how many people are creating this problem? Is it a half a dozen, or do you have any?
It's hard to say. It is really hard to guess how many are doing it. I know with the street racing, if we do catch, I know Corporal Matchett did catch a few people, and if we do happen to catch somebody, their vehicles are impounded automatically. So it's hard to, unless we actually break it down into statistics and see where it's coming from. We have to go to each individual and we have to look at their driving history, and that'll kind of indicate what they're doing. So it's very difficult.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question of Inspector Rivers. I'm just pulling up the stats again. For the Comox.
I can't hear you.
Hey, Russ, we can't hear you, Mayor.
Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. There we go. So on the Comox traffic files of the graphs here, you have just the yellow squares. So the areas that I know I'm getting a tremendous amount of communications from the residents is from that Point Homes, pretty much the airport Point Homes to the campground, and then it splinters off from there. I see you got a couple dots there, though. What does that indicate for violations? Do you have the stats for actual violations, or?
Yeah, I'd have to break it down. I have to go to my hot sheet here and look at each page where it ties into the road, because there's a lot of, that's Laszlo Road, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of violation tickets that were given out on Laszlo Road.
There is.
And I can, like I said, I can PDF this to you, and you can have a look yourself and see where these are taking place.
And is that an area that the members are going to, like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night? Because what I'm hearing from the residents in that area, that's around when these things are starting, from 10 o'clock on, and just a drive down there, you can see the burnout marks. They're
Yeah.
quite extensive in some areas. And this is, this has actually come to the point that we are having our public works look at this again, review this area when we do some road building in there next year. But we really need to get the RCMP presence in that area, and the speeding and the noise is really starting to become.
Yeah, and on the Laszlo Road and that Point Homes is routinely reported on to us. We do our best to get there and address those concerns, but we can't be there all the time, unfortunately.
No.
When we do hear about it, we try and get members there, and we do remind members. And this is where the information files come in. Where people report that, then we can, gives us a reminder as well to go visit that during the night to kind of make sure everything's fine.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you. And thank you to you and your members also for the unfortunate stabbing incident that happened and in the area. And I know those types of things are hard for the members to deal with, but thanks to all of you for being there for us.
No, thank you. Thanks for listening.
All right, no further questions from council. So thanks again, Mike, and we'll be talking with you.
Take care.
All right, we'll move on to adoption of the regular council meeting minutes from April the 21st.
Move.
Second.
Any questions, comments? All in favor? That's carried, thanks. And the consent agenda. So do we have a motion to accept them all, and then we'll go one by one?
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? All right, so does anybody have any ones in particular that they'd like to pull out? Councillor Minions.
If we can pull out C and D together because they're on the same topic,
C and D.
both on the speed we just spoke about.
Okay, so we have a mover, a seconder for those?
Second.
All right, so for discussion, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to check. I was talking to Lauren Lamb, who lives on the corner there, and I hadn't really realized that whatever they do when they go around that corner, drifting.
Drifting. Yeah.
And I was driving there and I did notice kind of quite a few of those black tire lines. So I'm just wondering, when we do look at the Lazo Road work, does it go to that extent? Because it was mentioned maybe a lower speed could be there, but of course it's not a school zone, it's not a play zone, so play park. I'm just wondering if when we look at that area and the speed, if that kind of corner would be encompassed into that as a part of it.
And CAO, do you know any of the specifics yet, or do we have Shelley Ashfield on?
Shelley's not on the meeting today,
Okay.
but in regards to work that could be done in order to decrease, I mean, generally when you're at a stop sign, there is no better traffic calming measure than a stop sign if you want people to slow down. If the issue is people going through and drifting through that, there's not. Yeah, so if they're drifting, they'd be coming to where the stop sign is and then spinning out into the other area. So if the issue is speeding along the area that has no stop sign, that's something that could be looked at for a speed change. But if the issue is people coming off where the stop sign is and drifting out into the other spot, I'm not sure there'd be anything we could do beyond encouraging enforcement.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure which direction it is. One way has a stop sign and one doesn't, but I'd never even thought that was kind of part of the racetrack problem, but I'm just curious if that would be looked at in that. So.
Okay, so that's C and D. Do we have anybody else taking out? Councillor McGowan.
Thanks. Just wanted to bring out E for quick discussion.
Yeah, so seconder on that?
Second.
All in favor? Discussion, go ahead.
Just wanted to clarify that we are sending out something to the paper or somewhere to clarify what is going on with.
There is a
17
letter to the
Balmoral,
editor
'cause-
today. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, that's.
There's a lot of confusion about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's in today's paper, and it went out electronically, I think Saturday or Sunday.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you. Okay, so individual ones, okay. Right, so Councillor
I think
Grant.
we'd be remiss if we didn't bring out A and thank
Oh,
the kids.
I was gonna mention
Oh,
that.
see, I
yeah,
wasn't gonna
yeah,
let you get away with that.
Yeah.
I hope Maureen got her vaccine. That's all.
yeah.
But I think that was a really interesting thing that Gallardi did. And, if there's something else we can do to help
Yeah.
to deal with that, I mean, I'd be happy to go to the schools and talk to them sometime if anybody
Yeah.
else wanted to go, because if they have that kind of interest, I think it's really good.
Well, you know, that was one of the things that when we all started this term, we had talked about is engaging the youth and maybe participating in one of these meetings at a school. And maybe once COVID is behind us and it's safe, we can invite the kids here and, you know, it'd be welcome to have the one who wrote me a letter sit here, and they each individually sent us a letter. I thought that was very sweet of them. So we definitely have to send them a thank you. So, all right. Any other ones on those? So, okay. So we'll carry on. The strategic planning and action items report from May the 5th for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Okay. Any questions, comments on that? All in favor? Okay, great. Thank you. The Comox Valley Marine Rescue Society for their moorage rates. There's a couple recommendations. Well, there's a recommendation and alternatives to recommendations.
Well, I'd like to move that we give them a 5-year no-cost moorage.
Okay.
As we had in the past.
Second.
That would be
that's-
alternative.
Is that?
I think that would be 2, and then we would just change the date. CAO.
No, 2 is.
Oh, no,
says
sorry,
to
discontinue. Oops,
So
sorry.
it's 1 and we just changed the number to 5.
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
The motion as made by Councillor Grant is okay with me, which is to
Okay.
provide the 5 years.
Yeah. So a seconder on that
I'll
one?
second that.
Okay, so for discussion. It's a pretty simple one here. They do great work. So seeing no questions or comments, all in favor? All right, so that's carried. Thank you. And let me jump up to my spot here. And we have a couple of notices of motion. The first one, a notice of motion from the April 21st, is that regarding the immediate protection for all at-risk old growth forests in BC. Now, Councillor McGowan, do you just want someone to move and second that, or would you like to read that out? Or
Whatever, it's a long one, whatever people would prefer. I'm happy to read it or happy to move it.
does someone want to move it as is? And
Yeah, I'll move it.
okay, so we got a mover and seconder. So for discussion, so just give us a brief synopsis of what you would like out of this.
Well, basically, we all received this communication from the Comox Youth Climate Council, who are increasingly active in the area. They did a lot of research, and even just yesterday, there was a CBC report coming out that came out that said that the old growth approvals had gone up 43% in the last year. I think it's our responsibility to push forward the concerns and the will of our constituents and our youth up to those that, you know, they don't necessarily have access to right away. So I think it's an important thing that we can lend our voice to. I would like there to be some old growth for the youth when they grow up as well, which at the rate we're going, there won't be. So any questions?
Okay, so any questions from council? There is a couple things at the end that it would be it resolved that the town of Comox call on the provincial government to immediately defer logging in all high productivity, rare, oldest, and most intact old growth forests as recommended by the Old Growth Strategic Review until all 14 of the panel's recommendations have been implemented, including deferrals in such at-risk old growth forests as the headwaters at Ferry Creek, Upper Walbrand Valley, Namit Valley, Eden Grove, Edinburgh Mountain, Upper Siska Valley, East Creek, Blackish Valley, Nymphish Lake, and the inland old growth temperate forest, and that the town of Comox formally opposed the logging of at-risk old growth forests, and that the town of Comox call on the government of BC to allocate funding to enact deferrals in an economically just manner, and that the following resolution be sent to the UBCM as a late submission to AVICC. So that's it. So Councillor Minions.
Are we in a question for discussion?
I just wanted to bring that up because I wanted the resolutions there, but yeah, so for discussion now. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, this is a hard one just because it's obviously quite contentious with people, in our community out on the bridge most days. And I can see both sides here. So I think I support the motion in most of its wording. And I think my concern and only change would be that if we're going to make a stance on it, we would say we have concern about, instead of opposing the logging of old risk forest, we have concern that it's not following what the experts are recommending, or make it a little bit softer of a stance. But I know that Cumberland, Courtney, and the CBRD has sent very similar to this. And I think if we did decide to have consensus on that as the community, it makes a little bit possibly of an impact on the province. So I think all we're asking for is them to consider waiting until the rest of the reports and the science come in. And even though it's a really back and forth issue, I think the fact that it's gone up, I read the same thing yesterday, about 44% this year, even though their own experts and science has said that they should be slowing it down. I personally feel very comfortable saying that I have concern with the rapid increases while their own government experts are telling them that it needs to be slowing down. So I think a softer version of it I would be comfortable with. And I know that it's not necessarily a municipal issue, but we voted, provincially as well. So I'm comfortable with a little softening of the language that I'd be happy to give a word or two change to.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions, comments? So seeing none, are you happy if Councillor Minions adds those in?
Yeah,
And-
if it's gonna move it forward,
Okay,
then I'd rather it go forward than not.
okay.
So I would propose that we move the motion as Councillor McGowan has put forward with the wording, and that the town of Comox has concern with the current practices of current rate.
Okay.
The current rate, is that enough?
Yeah, maybe.
Or a recommendation on the wording?
Practices of old growth logging.
Current practice.
Comox has concern on the current practices regarding logging all high productivity.
And can that be a friendly amendment, or do we have to do something official here?
You have to make the amendment, second it, and vote on the amendment.
Okay, I'll second the amendment.
Okay, any discussions on that? Oh, Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear CAO Wall, so could it be read again?
Sorry, be it resolved that the town of Comox has concerns in regards to the logging in all high productivity, rare, oldest, and then it just continues as it's written from there.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, comments on that one? So all in favor of that? Okay, and then the motion itself, any questions or comments on that one? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that's carried. Thank you. And we'll move on to notice of motion from April 21st regarding the toxic drug supply crisis. Councillor McGowan, do you want to give a synopsis of that one?
Yeah, it's, I think we're all pretty aware of the other epidemic going on. I think everybody has lost somebody to the toxic drug supply. COVID has made it worse. It's shown in other countries that there are ways that we can manage it. And COVID has also shown us that if we want to, we can make rapid change to save lives very, very quickly. The information, the science and everything is there. The upper levels of governments just need to take those steps, and they need to know that our citizens are dying and that they need to do the right thing here.
Okay, so we have a mover, a seconder on this one.
Second.
Okay, so for discussion, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, so when I'm reading this, it looks to me as if we're calling for the decriminalization of street drugs. Is that what we're doing here?
We are declaring a toxic drug supply in a crisis and seeking input from people considering legal reforms. It's been shown that it's not a criminal issue, it's a health issue, and to be dealt with in a health in that bailiwick is far more successful, far cheaper, better for everybody all around. Other countries have successfully done it in many places at this point. So
Okay, well, I'm just looking at the bottom line here, and it says such as legal regulations for illicit drugs to ensure safe supply of pharmaceutical alternatives to toxic street drugs. So what I'm wanting to be certain here is that we're not calling for the decriminalization of,
I would be, yeah.
yeah,
That's
so
what
see, I wouldn't be, so that's my point,
okay.
right? I look at this and I see young kids that are coming up through high school. We have some. And in my opinion, when you decriminalize something, you make it okay for some of them to go, try it out, do things. We have some firsthand experience with this kind of thing, and it's not as simple as you would think. So I get that once you've got people that are in that state, that may be a good thing, but there's a whole other level here for me. So I have some troubles with that piece.
I'll let Councillor Minions, Minions, and then you can speak, Miguel.
Yeah, hopefully maybe there's some word tending that we can get to where everyone is on some verbiage, because I think it is pretty important. But from listening to talks around decriminalization, I think the challenge is with the personal use criminal effect. Once people have that criminal record, it's basically affecting their ability to find housing, their ability to get jobs. And so the challenge is the way we viewed street drugs and beyond hard drugs is that it's causing worse effects for the rest of the person's life. So I don't, that's the way I look at decriminalization, is they need to relook at what that's doing to people that are having that. So I don't know if you would pass it with, or have another
So it's
suggestion.
two things. You're talking decriminalization, you're talking yeah, but okay. Or yeah, maybe I'm getting twisted. Okay. Oh,
Well, with the topic in general, I don't have a big issue with the topic in general. What I do have an issue with is when you have young kids that are vulnerable to being, to trying things and doing things like this. I've watched this happen with kids that I know, and it's legal, so it's okay, so I can do it. And I have a problem with that part of it. I don't have a problem with the majority of this, in that I think that, yes, there is problems. Yes, there's toxic drug supply. How you deal with that is a completely different debate, I think. And so I'm just struggling with that piece of it at the bottom. I don't know how to fix it, but that's what I'm struggling with.
okay. I see Councillor McKenna.
Yep, thanks, Mayor. So, I think there's some wording that we could probably play with here. I'm not by any stretch of any imagination an expert in this matter, but I think what I read there as far as decriminalization, Ken, I think, or Councillor Grant, I think that if your kids were going to try something, I would rather have them try a controlled pharmaceutical than a toxic street drug. And I think that's maybe somewhat the intent of this motion. We're all teenagers growing up. We all tried stuff. Most of us tried stuff. I won't speak for everyone. And so I think the intent of the motion is good. And I think, when I think about the deaths in British Columbia, I think over 300 in the first 2 months of the year. I might be wrong on that stat. At the Coalition to End Homelessness today, there was more talk about the toxic supply. And, it's not about overdose. It's about bad supply of drugs. And so, we have to fix that one way or another, especially in British Columbia. So, I'm in support of the motion. I'm not sure I'm in support of the decriminalization either, but I'm not afraid of that part of the motion. So I'd like to hear more discussion.
Yeah. So Councillor McGowan, go ahead now.
Yeah, just a few points. So decriminalization doesn't mean legalization. It doesn't mean that it's going to be, there's going to be meth and coke stores popping up on the corners. It just means that people who are caught with it or going through addiction, having those issues, they're going to be treated for their medical issue and for their social issues, rather than thrown in jail and just starting that cycle. It's not a slippery slope in that way. It just changes the narrative of how people look at those with addictions, how people use or look at those with substance use issues. Alcohol, cigarettes, now cannabis have all been legal for quite a while. Smoking's going down in kids. Alcohol, I don't know if they drink any more or less than they did when I was a teenager, but it certainly hasn't, it's there. And the fact that it's being used and hidden, and that's why people are dying. If people weren't afraid to do it or do it with people or in a safe place, they weren't stigmatized, they wouldn't be alone and dying by themselves. I've heard a lot of people in the last last year or so, say, "All my friends are dying." People that are in addictions or on the street or just in certain areas, and it's heartbreaking. Yeah, it's also about education, not just decriminalization, but education, because kids aren't stupid. The DARE program has been shown not to work. So giving people the actual information saying, yeah, this is not good for your brain yet, might be, like with cannabis, not good for you when you're a teenager. Give them the real information and have the services available for support and mental health and family services, and you'll watch the drug supply and addiction dwindle.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Minions, did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't think I spoke clearly enough on the last one because I was trying to speak to the same point, but it might not have connected. So in the workshop that I was in, they did say decriminalization and legalization is two separate things. So it wouldn't legalize it. It would mean that if your child got caught at 20 with a drug and would have gotten a criminal record for personal use, that potentially wouldn't be the case in that way. So it's hard to say. I also think there's kids that would do something just because it's illegal. And I don't have that personal experience with it, but because decriminalization, again, from workshop, doesn't mean it's true. I'm not an expert, but is not the same as legalization. My personal comfort is okay with the way it's worded because it's meant to change the outcome of those that have a criminal record for personal use. So it's not about who's selling the drugs. It's not about legalizing the actual hard drugs. It's just about taking away the decriminalization, which leads to generally worse outcomes.
Okay. All right. So there's two parts of this, just so if people are listening in. Be it resolved that council requests that the government of Canada, A, declare the toxic drug supply crisis a national public health emergency, and B, immediately seek input from people most affected by this crisis and develop a comprehensive pan-Canadian overdose action plan. So those are the two that we have in front of us. So any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none. All in favor? That
Sorry, I'm not sure what you're reading there.
the resolve, therefore be it resolved.
Okay,
A and B. There was two parts to this.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So were you voting in the affirmative, Councillor Grant?
Well,
or-
what I was looking at is if we took the very last line and stopped at the comma and scrub out and decriminalize for personal use, I'd probably be okay with it.
I'm pretty set on that decriminalization
Okay,
aspect.
Then I'm opposed.
all right. So we have one opposed then. All right, so that's carried. So we'll send something in. Thank you. That was a very good debate on that. So we'll move out down to bylaw adoptions, water, sewer, and refuse fees. Bylaws number 1973, 2021 be adopted.
Move.
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments on that? Councillor Swift?
Thank you. I know typically we've always had the same rate for both water and sewer, but given our sewer is falling behind, I'm wondering if, not for this time, but for next time, it might be worth considering changing that. And I don't know if there's a rationale for having them identical. So maybe staff could comment on that.
Clive, are you able to make a comment on that?
Sure, yeah. Water, these are reserve fund balances that we're speaking to with the parcel taxes. This is the money transferred into the reserves. And both of them on an annual basis over the many years, we've been quite low. We were starting off around $45 parcel tax, and we've sort of inched it up now to about on par with the other jurisdictions to some degree. And it really is just to sustain the reserves, both sewer and water. There's not a specific, we know that both of the reserves are not, they're sort of at a minimal level. You wouldn't want to be below that because of projects, but both water, we see water pipe bursts and so forth. There's capital projects coming down the line for the water. Councillor Swift, did you speak to the sewer? I'm sorry, I might have missed that a little bit there.
Oh, sorry. Well, I'm just trying to find in here on it was $60 for both, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, both of them are still low, but that's about as far as we need to move right now. We just keep that as a sort of a baseline at the 60 would be minimum. And then I'm not planning on anything in the 5 years to address that again. We'll just see how it all goes with the capital projects that come out of the asset management project. But we are pretty low already, sort of 300,000 increase to the reserves each year. And for asset management requirements, that's pretty minimal where we're at. And regionally, those rates are below the other jurisdictions.
Yeah, I noticed that. And it was also interesting to notice that they calculate their rates differently.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But in any event, no, I was going to say somewhere in here, it noted that the sewer was going to be, will be short $1 million for sewer, which will further reduce the sewer reserve. So my question is, if would there be any sense in considering raising the parcel tax for sewer going forward? Not for this budget year, but
no, not for this budget. I think it's early still. Right now, I feel that the 60 in both are meeting our requirements, and I know it's a big lift to go to 60. But I think that right now, that's where we'd stay and hold. I don't expect to come back to council for another lift in that area. There's not enough information for me really to feel that our sewer reserve is higher than the water reserve by roughly $1 million or so anyway. So.
Okay, so you're comfortable.
Yeah, I feel that it's a happy balance there.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, and the CAO wants to make a comment.
Yeah, so just as we move through our asset management program and we develop it, we're going to be connecting the value of our assets and their replacement timelines with the amount of money that we need to come in. So as we develop that strategy, which is probably the financial piece of it's probably 2 years away, I think you would see this type of change coming in where there's a less of an arbitrary number. And I don't want to say it's arbitrary because that $60 means something and it's meant to fund a certain level of infrastructure. But as we get to that point, I think you're going to see a decoupling of a flat $60 rate and more in line with the actual level of funding that we need. And we're going to start that process with council actually at your next strategic planning meeting. I think we have about an hour to an hour and a half set aside to start talking about where we are and how we're going to get to that financial strategy.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Any other further questions on that? So this is bylaw 1973 for adoption. All in favor? Okay, great. Thank you. And then we'll go down to 2, that the Comox Sewer User Rates Amendment Bylaw 1974 be adopted.
Move.
Second.
And any questions, comments on that? All in favor? Okay, great. Thank you. And that number 3, the Comox Refuse Collection Amendment Bylaw 1985.09 be adopted.
Move.
Second.
All in, questions, comments? All in favor? Great, thank you. Moving down to new business. We had a request from the Fallen Dafa Day for a proclamation, and that we have a recommendation here that council denies a proclamation request to recognize it.
Move.
Second.
Okay, questions, comments? All in favor? Okay, thank you. And now, I'm being mindful of the time. We have a public hearing At 6 o'clock, we have item B, which is the expedited approval of 1200 Military Row subdivision and development. If council thinks they can bang this off in 6 minutes, or
Maybe we could sneak in the additional item to the agenda, which is the grant approval.
okay,
That we could probably get that done in just 2 or 3 minutes.
sure, yeah, go ahead and explain that one.
So we're going to ask for council to move an on-table item. So that requires unanimous consent of council. Staff has been preparing to make a grant application to the development approvals grant that was put out by the provincial government. And so we have a motion that council would support the grant application, which is worth $500,000. So if council were to give unanimous consent, the motion that we'd be looking for is that council approve staff to apply for the local government development approvals program, requesting $500,000 in funding toward development process review and improvements.
Okay, seconder?
Second.
Okay, questions, comments on that one?
So first motion is to bring it onto the agenda, which requires unanimous consent.
Okay,
Move.
so all in favor of that? All right, there's unanimous.
And then move what he said.
And
And then the
I'll
second
second
motion is
what he said.
the grant application.
okay, all right. So any questions or comments on that? All in favor? Great, thank you.
Now, there is a different Zoom link for the public hearing. Does everybody have that, or would you like it sent out again?
Please.
Shelley, can you send that out to everybody? And we'll see you over on the other Zoom. When that
Yes.
Zoom is done, come back to this one for the rest of the regular meeting.
Yeah, so if any public is listening, we're going to the public hearing and we will come back to this one. Thank you.